Hello, my name is William McLean, and today I'm going to talk about a few steps and few tips to help you tune your car for horsepower. In this discussion, I will talk just about horsepower and nothing about aerodynamics or traction or grip. Just straight up how to get more horsepower. First thing you should know and probably focus on is your budget. With any tune or any project, you need to know how much money you can spend and how much stuff is going to cost. Any car tuning project tends to be very expensive and can cost a lot of money to do. Also, you need to know your platform. You can't expect the same amount of horsepower to be gained from every type of car. Just like you wouldn't expect a supercar to match up with a four-cylinder car or certain American cars to be tuned beyond their already performance level. Next, you need to know your expectations. You can't expect to get the same amount of power out of every type of platform. Some cars can generate more power, other cars can generate less power. Being honest and having your expectations is very important when you're trying to get more horsepower. For instance, I own a 2004 Subaru STI. From the factory, it puts out 300 horsepower and 300 torque, but those numbers aren't truly accurate, and I'm not going to go into the details of wheel horsepower and brake horsepower, but it gives me a good starting point. Next, you need to know what kind of engine you have. So here you'll see a picture of a four-cylinder STI engine, a six-cylinder from a Nissan Skyline, and a V8 engine. We're not going to talk about any V10s or V12s. This is just small engines. So, in order to make power, you need something I call FAT, which is fuel, air, and temperature. When you have those three components and everything goes properly, you generate power, and that gives your engine the ability to go and makes more horsepower. So, the first thing you should probably want to do if you're trying to get more horsepower is strengthen up your engine. That means you're changing out your crankshaft, your pistons, your rods, and everything to make your engine a little bit stronger. Each engine can tolerate a little bit more performance than when it was made at the factory, but you need to strengthen those components. You also may want to consider strengthening your drivetrain. That includes your flywheel, your clutch, and maybe even your axles, because you don't want to lose any of your additional horsepower to your transmission case. That's a very important part of getting more horsepower. So let's talk about turbos. Turbos pretty much generate more airflow in your vehicles. And if you're going to have a turbo, you need to have a blow-off valve and an intercooler. A blow-off valve can either recirculate air into your turbo or it could dump air and give you that cool sound effect. Also, you may consider doing a supercharger. A supercharger, much like a turbo, generates additional air and forces it into your motor. It generates air quicker than a turbocharger and it gives you that jolt of power that you may need on tap. Next, you have your air intake, which can either be a short ram or a cold air intake. A cold air intake is usually in the fender well, where a short ram is usually connected to your factory air box. Again, the goal is to try to generate more air for your engine so it can breathe better and produce more power. So, moving on to producing more power and having your car breathe better, there's exhaust. So there's four types of exhaust. There's just the muffler, which is considered axle back, a cat back, which is beyond your Cadillac converter, and then you can also have a turbo back, which is beyond the turbo and back. You also need fuel. So your basic fuel system consists of a fuel pump that goes through fuel lines, and you have your fuel injectors, which dumps fuel into your intake manifold. So if you want more power, you need bigger injectors and a better fuel delivery system. Additionally, there is tons of electronics on your car that needs to be upgraded. but the most simple one to upgrade will be your spark plugs. So depending on how many cylinders you have will depend on how many spark plugs you have. 4 cylinders have 4 spark plugs, 6 have 6 spark plugs, and so forth. Sensors need to be upgraded also. Additionally, you will need to monitor your performance and see what's going on in your car. A lot of people install gauges on their A-frame so they could look at them and get a quick synopsis of what's going on in their car after it's been tuned. This is a very wise investment. Next, you'll need something to control all that power. Some vehicles have a standalone engine management system, and then some vehicles also have a access port or small computer that can connect to your vehicle and control the performance that way. Controlling the power is very important. Next, you need to see if you actually made any horsepower. The best way to do that is to get a dyno test. Dyno test can show you your before and after horsepower readings after you've gotten all your fancy parts and everything installed on your vehicle. Dyno is probably the most important part of a tune. As I mentioned before, I am not a tuner. I do mess with my car and I do have some aftermarket performance stuff on my vehicle. But I know my limits, and this video was just a short presentation of some of the stuff that you may need to know if you do want to tune your car for more horsepower. But with that being said, make sure you follow all traffic rules, all regulations, safety, and Department of Transportation rules before you go out there and try to speed race or modify your vehicle. Thank you for listening to my presentation on how to tune your car for more horsepower.